Hanli did not have the luxury of waiting that long. At most, in another 4 or 5 months, Dr. Mo would completely confront him. He had to possess a certain degree of self-preservation ability before that happened. Thus, he ultimately decided to focus only on a few simple, quickly masterable techniques that could be used immediately, while setting the rest aside for now. He would not be late to learn them after he had narrowly escaped this ordeal. In this way, the training time was greatly shortened, allowing him to learn several fast-track, easy-to-master secret techniques as early as possible. In truth, Hanli was also very clear in his heart. Even if he mastered all these secret techniques without missing a single one, it still might not be enough to match his opponent. If Dr. Mo had not lied last time, then given his prestigious identity as a former hegemon of that region, there were countless vicious and formidable methods he had never revealed during their previous clash. What he had shown so far was likely only a fraction of his true strength. Even so, just thinking about that ghost-like movement made Hanli feel a chill run through him, filling him with extreme apprehension toward Dr. Mo. He understood very clearly that what he had learned in such a short time was extremely limited, and the threat he could pose to Dr. Mo was almost negligible. However, he would never submit willingly or allow himself to be manipulated like a fool. Hanli knew that if they were to clash again, his only chance of victory would lie in the opponent's contempt for him. Only if Dr. Mo underestimated him and let his guard down could a sudden, unexpected strike give him even the slightest chance of survival. In the days that followed, Hanli memorized the entire Blink sword manual and selected several techniques useful for his current situation to study, trying to devise an efficient training path. After several days of exhausting mental effort, he organized a complete set of cultivation methods from a book. To complete such tedious work in so short a time made him quite proud of his efficiency. Over the following half-month, Hanli handled various trivial matters one by one, ensuring he was fully prepared with no lingering concerns. First, he returned the original copy of the manual to Li Feiyu, and casually told him about encountering a wild Wolfgang spy. Of course, he also mentioned exposing the identity of the kitchen steward. After hearing this, Li Feiyu was both shocked and delighted. He grabbed Han Li's shoulder and repeatedly called him good brother, deeply moved that Han Li had given him such a great achievement for nothing. However, he did not know that Han Li was now preoccupied with saving his own life and had no interest in catching spies. Since he could gain goodwill without effort, why would he refuse? After finishing matters with Li Feiyu, Han Li personally visited several skilled blacksmiths within the sect. He ordered several sheathed short swords of different designs and requested some subtle secret modifications. In addition, he commissioned some seemingly unrelated miscellaneous parts and several small, delicate iron bells, all to be completed as quickly as possible. For this, Han Li spent a considerable amount of silver, which made him feel a slight pang of pain. A few days later, Han Li received the items he had commissioned from the blacksmiths. Seeing the gleaming short swords and exquisitely crafted iron bells, he was very satisfied and praised their craftsmanship repeatedly, feeling his money had been well spent. That very night, Han Li vanished from his residence without a trace, leaving only a note by his bedside. Elder Mo, there is no need to be anxious. I'm not fleeing or hiding. I simply feel that staying in the same valley with you brings too much pressure, which is not conducive to my cultivation of the longevity art. Therefore, I've decided to find another secluded place on the mountain to go in a closed-door cultivation. Rest assured, I will return to meet you on the same day, 4 months from now. Finally, respectfully submits. Leaning back in a grand armchair, Dr. Mo held the note in his left hand and read it carefully, his face shrouded in dark clouds. On the table beside him lay another note listing the items Han Li had recently ordered from the blacksmiths. At that moment, the only sound in the room was the dull thud-thud of Dr. Mo's right fingers tapping the table. Suddenly, he let out a cold snort, and the paper in his hand was reduced to fragments, scattering across the floor. He stood up irritably and paced back and forth in the room, frowning as he pondered something. After several rounds, he stopped and muttered to himself, "You little brat. Though I don't know what tricks you're playing, no matter what schemes you devise, you won't escape my grasp. I've already decided on you." After speaking, Dr. Mo suddenly turned and walked to the window. A long, low whistle escaped his lips, and a small, nameless bird with yellow feathers flew in from outside, circled the room twice, and then landed on his shoulder. The little bird, once it had steadied itself, affectionately rubbed its beak against his face without pause, while emitting crisp, glue chirping sounds. "All right, I know you're hungry. Here, this is your favorite yellow chestnut pill." Upon seeing the bird, Dr. Mo's gloomy face showed a hint of a smile, and a doting look appeared in his eyes. He took a yellow bird feed pill from his pocket and stuffed it into the bird's beak. "Go. As before, keep following that person closely. The moment he leaves this mountain range, fly back immediately and report to me." Dr. Mo instructed as if speaking to a human. After swallowing the food, the little bird excitedly flew around the room with gurgly cries. After hearing his words, it circled once and then shot out of the window, disappearing into the sky. Oomph! With the surveillance of the cloud-winged bird, said to be even faster than arrows shot from strong bows, "I'd like to see what tricks you can pull," he muttered darkly to himself. "For months? I'll wait for that day to arrive. It seems the plan is about to succeed. From now on, whoever dares stand in my way or obstruct its execution, I will kill them. If gods block me, I'll kill the gods. If Buddhas block me, I'll kill the Buddhas." Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Dr. Mo suddenly burst into unrestrained laughter, his eyes filled with madness. "You're getting too carried away. That boy is very shrewd and no easy target. Don't end up failing at the last step and losing everything in his hands." Suddenly, another young man's voice rang out in Dr. Mo's mind. Dr. Mo's expression changed, his face as cold as frost. He reprimanded coldly, "You Zitong, mind your own business. I don't need you to lecture me. If I succeed, you'll naturally benefit. On the other hand, the technique you gave me seems to have some flaws. Are you hoping I'll run into some accident?" The suspicion in Dr. Mo's tone was completely exposed. The voice seemed somewhat afraid of Dr. Mo. After hearing his threat, it hurriedly explained, "How could there be a mistake? Haven't you already tested it on animals? As for the one that died, that was only because you weren't yet proficient with the technique. Besides, that one's death shouldn't affect your plan." "Oomph. I hope so. It's a pity I can't practice it further. Otherwise, I would have even greater certainty." After hearing this, Dr. Mo thought about his previous experiments, and the last trace of doubt in his heart vanished. After saying this, the voice seemed to learn from its earlier mistake and fell silent. Only Dr. Mo remained, muttering to himself like a madman, the atmosphere in the room turning eerie and unnatural. Meanwhile, Han Li was in an inconspicuous mountain ravine, even more remote and hidden than the place where he had met Li Feiyu. The terrain here was long and narrow, squeezed into a straight I shape between two steep small peaks. Both ends of the ravine were completely blocked by dense bushes, making passage impossible. The only way in or out was a single rope hanging secretly from the top of the lower peak. In addition, the area was filled with dense thickets of thorns covering much of the ground, leaving only a small clearing where Han Li could stand. At the top of the ravine, countless unknown vines were woven together into a natural green canopy, ensuring that anyone passing by above would not accidentally see him below. Han Li placed his belongings under a huge boulder, then returned to the center of the clearing, closed his eyes and thought for a moment, and opened them again with a resolute expression. Let's start with the most difficult technique to train, the soft bone skill. And so, Han Li began his solitary path of cultivation. He did not know that not far away, a small yellow bird was perched on a branch, watching him day and night. Only because he showed no intention of escaping did it not fly back to report to its master. Time passed quickly, 4 months in the blink of an eye, and half of that time had already gone by. At this moment, the mountain ravine was completely empty at a glance. Han Li, who had once been there, was nowhere to be seen. Only the little yellow bird remained in place, unhurriedly grooming its feathers, completely unconcerned by the disappearance of its target, as if it had long since abandoned its mission. Suddenly, another gray bird flew through the green vines above and entered the ravine. It circled a few times overhead before landing on a yellow wooden stump at the edge of the clearing, seemingly intending to rest briefly before flying off again. The little yellow bird tilted its head, looking at the newcomer with a proud, almost human-like expression, and revealed a disdainful sneer as if looking down on it. The newly arrived bird stood on one leg, scanning its surroundings, and finally spotted its companion. It flapped its wings as if intending to fly over. In that instant, an unexpected change occurred. A weathered yellow hand suddenly descended from the sky and grabbed the confused gray bird. The sudden change filled it with terror. It struggled desperately, but unfortunately, it could not break free from the control of the hand's owner at all. Only then did the little bird realize that the wooden stake beneath its feet had, at some unknown point, turned into a young man in a yellow robe. The young man had dark skin, an ordinary appearance, thick brows, and large eyes. Apart from a pair of unusually clear eyes, there was nothing particularly striking about him. The young man smiled as he watched the little bird thrashing in his hand. Only when it was nearly exhausted did he finally loosen his grip and say gently, "Go on. Don't be so foolish next time. Make sure you see where you're landing before you perch." Freed at once, the little bird did not even spare a thought for its companion. In panic, it flapped its wings and flew out of the ravine without looking back. After watching it leave, the young man stood there motionless. After a long while, he murmured to himself, "It seems my breath-concealing technique and disguise and concealment art have both reached a certain level of mastery. Next, I should start practicing the chamber assassination technique." With that, Hanli shifted his body and walked toward a newly built wooden hut nearby. As he passed the tree where the little yellow bird had been perched, he could not help but glance up at it. He had noticed this strangely behaving little bird more than half a month ago. It had always stayed on a nearby branch, constantly watching him, as if it possessed great intelligence. The first time he saw it, Hanli was captivated by its spirituality and grew quite fond of the little yellow bird. He tried to take it away, but no matter what methods he used, luring, enticing, or setting traps, none worked. The bird showed no intention of being deceived and would occasionally look at him with a gaze as if he were a fool, leaving Hanli both amused and helpless. Later, in frustration, he tried to forcefully catch it, but before he could even get close, it immediately spread its wings and flew into the sky. As soon as Hanli left, it would quickly return and land in the same spot again, leaving him standing there, staring blankly. Thinking of this, Hanli turned away somewhat sulkily and ignored it. In truth, he had already vaguely realized that the origin of this little bird was probably related to Dr. Mo, and it was very likely sent to monitor him. However, Hanli did not care. As long as it was not Dr. Mo personally watching him, what could a mere bird report? Moreover, he genuinely liked this spiritually intelligent little creature and could not bear to use harsh methods against it. Meanwhile, Dr. Mo was in a stone chamber, drawing a strange formation with beast bone powder. As he drew, he discussed something with another presence in his mind, completely unaware that Hanli had already seen through his surveillance method. During this period, a major event also occurred within the Seven Mysteries sect. The idol of the new generation of disciples, Senior Brother Li, with exceptional alertness, exposed 2 spies from the Wild Wolf Gang on the spot. They had attempted to steal the list of disciples going down the mountain for training. Together with more than a dozen fellow disciples, he captured them all in one move, earning considerable merit. A few days later, sect leader Wang publicly conferred the position of protector upon Li Feiyu before many disciples, officially elevating him into the upper ranks of the Seven Mysteries sect. This caused quite a sensation, and Li Feiyu's reputation became even more prominent. Hanli, however, knew nothing of this. He was undergoing closed-door training inside his sealed wooden hut. Apart from occasionally going to the kitchen for food, He had not interacted with anyone for many days, and naturally had no idea of his friend's current glory. Summer passed into autumn. Time flew like an arrow, and the day finally arrived, the last day before the agreement. In the bramble forest at the bottom of the ravine, a bizarre figure flickered in and out among branches covered with sharp thorns. The extremely dangerous spikes caused him no obstruction at all. He moved like a wisp of green smoke, ghostly passing through the dense net woven by thorny branches, appearing near at one moment, vanishing far away the next, all completely silent, as if he were not flesh and blood, but an incorporeal being. Finally, the figure stopped on a tree trunk. Standing upright on a branch, he gazed into the distance. It was none other than Han Li, who had achieved some progress in his cultivation. At this moment, his clothes were already tattered and torn, exposing patches of skin beneath. His hair was disheveled, and his face was streaked with black and white marks, making his original appearance unrecognizable. Most striking of all, small iron bells were hanging from his neck, waist, arms, thighs, and ankles. Seeing these iron bells, and recalling Han Li's ghost-like movement through the forest, it was not difficult to understand how bizarre his movement technique had been. He stood motionless, looking toward Divine Hand Valley, and murmured to himself, "The timing is just right. I've finally mastered the smoke step on the last day. With it, I have one more means of self-protection." Although his expression could not be clearly seen, the joy in his eyes was completely unconcealed. After months of study and grueling practice, Han Li had mastered several secret techniques of considerable power. He had developed a fair amount of confidence in them, believing that although they might not allow him to contend with Dr. Mo's unfathomable skills, they were still enough for self-defense. A gentle breeze blew in, and Han Li felt a slight chill on his body. He lowered his head to look at his hole-ridden clothing, imagining what he currently looked like, and could not help but let out a wry smile. Thinking back to his training in the smoke step, he still felt a lingering sense of fear. Cultivating movement techniques in a thorn-filled forest was truly a life-threatening endeavor. Because he was initially unfamiliar with the footwork, he inevitably got scraped and torn by the hard thorns on the branches, leaving him covered in wounds and bloodied all over. Fortunately, he still had the nurturing essence pill with him. It could not only treat internal injuries, but was also astonishingly effective for external wounds. After taking just one pill, the bleeding would stop immediately and scabs would form. By the next day, even the scars would completely disappear without a trace. Han Li had marveled at this for a long time. This medicine was far superior to ordinary wound medicine. He only could not understand why it was named Nurturing Essence Pill. In his view, something like Scar Removal Pill or Blood Stopping Pill would have been far more appropriate. If the expert who created the Nurturing Essence Pill were to hear Han Li's thoughts, he would likely be so furious that he spat blood. His painstakingly refined, sacred healing elixir was being compared alongside the crude golden wound medicine of wandering quack doctors of the martial world. How could that not enrage such an expert? However, it was precisely because he practiced in such a dangerous environment that Han Li was able to fully stimulate his potential. In a short period of time, he had brought the smoke step to a usable level, enough to be applied immediately in combat. Moreover, just a few days earlier, Han Li had successfully cultivated the longevity art to the 6th layer without incident. This was the highest layer of the technique's formula that Dr. Mo had given him. Without more than a dozen bottles of spiritual medicine to assist him, even if he had exhausted all his strength, he might not have been able to cultivate it successfully in his lifetime. After years of cultivation, Han Li had also gained considerable insight into the longevity art. He felt that this technique was extremely unusual, differing greatly from ordinary martial arts both in method of cultivation and in its effects. First of all, Han Li believed that success or failure in cultivating this art, as well as the speed of progress, depended largely on the individual, on whether the practitioner's aptitude was compatible with it. Those with excellent aptitude would naturally progress smoothly and without obstruction. Even without external assistance, they could likely reach a high level through sheer effort. But for those with poor aptitude, once they reached a certain stage, progress would become extremely difficult without the aid of spiritual medicine. Hanli speculated that they might be stuck for life with no further advancement, just like himself. He had cultivated the first 3 layers quite smoothly, but upon reaching the 4th layer, progress had suddenly become extremely difficult, with no improvement whatsoever. However, with the help of elixirs, what was impossible became possible, allowing one to break through the limits of aptitude and advance further. From this, it could be seen just how heavily this technique depended on medicinal power. Yet someone like him, consuming spiritual medicines like snacks, 1 or 2 pills a day, was probably rare in the entire world. Thus, in theory, the more difficult 5th and 6th layers had actually been cultivated by him with ease, without experiencing the hardships he had faced at the 4th layer. After reaching great completion at the 6th layer of the longevity art, Hanli had found himself with increased energy and a sharper mind, but he had not yet discovered any other special effects. Strangely enough, ever since he began cultivating the longevity art, its enhancements have been limited to spirit, cognition, and the 5 senses at each stage. Its effect on the body was minimal, merely making him physically stronger and more agile. The energy flow it generated, which Hanli referred to as pseudo-true qi, could circulate freely through his meridians like ordinary true qi. However, aside from making his sense of touch more sensitive, it had no other practical effects and could not unleash the tremendous power of true internal energy. Furthermore, upon reaching this stage, he felt that there must still be unfinished portions of the formula beyond the 6th layer. Perhaps its true wonders lay in the later stages. Thinking of this, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. Given his current relationship with Dr. Mo, the later portions of the technique were completely out of the question. Putting aside his wandering thoughts, Hanli leapt down lightly, landing on the ground without making the slightest sound, then strode toward the small wooden hut. Tomorrow he would meet Dr. Mo. Before that, he intended to make full use of his abilities, planning out every step of their encounter in his mind, carefully considering every minor detail that might arise, and formulating the best possible responses to any unforeseen dangers. The sun hung high in the sky. Even though it was early autumn, there was still a faint hint of heat in the air. Inside his room, Dr. Mo felt somewhat restless. Although he was confident in his method of coercing Hanli, he still could not help feeling a sense of uncertainty at this critical moment. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from afar in the direction of the house, gradually drawing closer to his room. Upon hearing the familiar sound of footsteps, Dr. Mo was overjoyed. He rushed forward in a single stride and pushed the door open. Not far away, a figure slowly approached, precisely the person he had been waiting for so long. Hanli. Watching the other party draw nearer, Dr. Mo suppressed his excitement and forced a faint smile onto his face. Good. You're very punctual. I'm glad to see you didn't try to run. That shows you're wise. Come inside now. We need to have a proper talk. At this moment, Dr. Mo's expression was as kindly as an elder next door, his face bright like a blooming flower. Don't worry. Nothing has been tampered with inside. It's not a dragon's den. Seeing Hanli glance toward the room with some caution, Dr. Mo quickly explained and even used a subtle provocation. Since I'm already here, would I still be afraid to enter your house? Hanli snorted, as if genuinely provoked, then stepped forward first. Dr. Mo hurriedly stepped aside with a smiling face, making way for him. Just as Hanli entered, he instinctively reached out to close the door, but suddenly heard Hanli say without turning his head, "If you dare close that door, I'll take it as you're trying to trap me inside. I won't continue this talk with you." Dr. Mo froze upon hearing this. After a brief hesitation, he stepped away from the door and said casually, "I truly came to discuss matters with you. I mean you no harm. If you don't want the door closed, then it won't be closed." Dr. Mo then reclined as usual in the grand armchair, while Hanli also made no ceremony. He pulled over a stool and sat down boldly across from him. The two had not met for nearly half a year, and they sized each other up for a while. Han Li noticed that Dr. Mo had clearly aged significantly. He now looked no different from a man in his 70s. He couldn't help but silently wonder, could what the other party once said actually be true? Was he really only seeking to restore his essence and had no ulterior motives? Had he been overthinking things? Han Li swept his gaze around the room, and suddenly his pupils contracted. The tall, mysterious man stood silently in a corner, completely motionless and soundless like a dead object. If one were not deliberately searching for him, he would be impossible to notice. By then, Dr. Mo had finished observing Han Li as well. Apparently satisfied with his condition, he said gently, "Seeing you like this reminds me of when you first arrived. Back then you were just a boy in your early teens, only this tall. And now you've grown so big. Time truly spares no one." This casual, conversational tone left Han Li somewhat confused about his intentions, though in his heart his vigilance immediately rose. He reminded himself, this old fox had eaten more salt than he had eaten rice. He must not fall into his trap. "Dr. Mo, I have always remembered your care and dare not forget it. If you have any instructions, please feel free to tell me," Han Li said with a softened expression, respectfully addressing him as if returning to his obedient disciple self. Good. With that, the effort I've spent on you is not in vain. Come, let me first check your progress in the longevity art." Dr. Mo seemed to have truly assumed the role of a benevolent master. He stood up and walked over, reaching directly to take Han Li's pulse. Old fox, still acting senior and shamelessly overbearing. Han Li cursed inwardly and quickly sidestepped the grasp. "Don't rush, Dr. Mo. I can tell you clearly that my longevity art has indeed reached the 4th layer. But shouldn't you first hand over the antidote to the corpse worm pill? Only after removing that burden can I safely let you inspect my cultivation." Han Li smiled and spoke in a sincere tone. "Oh, look at my memory. Getting old really does make one forgetful. I had originally planned to give you the antidote as soon as you entered," Dr. Mo said as if suddenly remembering something. He rummaged through his sleeve, took out a silver bottle, and poured out a pitch-black pill, tossing it toward Han Li. Han Li pretended to fumble awkwardly before barely catching it. He brought it to his nose and sniffed it. A pungent, spicy odor rushed up. He looked at Dr. Mo, who was watching him with a half-smile. After a slight hesitation, Han Li felt some doubt about whether the medicine was genuine. But he had no choice but to take it. The day of the corpse worm pill's outbreak was approaching. If he didn't take it, he would surely die. He reasoned that since the other party still needed him, it probably wasn't fake. With a solemn expression, he swallowed the pill, then waited quietly for its effects to take hold. Dr. Mo, however, seemed to lose his urgency. He lazily returned to his seat and resumed idle conversation with Han Li, as though he had already forgotten the true purpose of calling him over. Not long after, Han Li felt a sudden moment of pain in his abdomen, but it quickly passed. He hurriedly checked his body and discovered that the corpse worm pill. After Han Li finished checking the effects of medicine, Dr. Mo smiled and said, "Han Li, regarding the corpse worm pill I made you take, it was also something I had no choice but to do. Without it urging you on from behind, I'm afraid it would not have been so easy for you to cultivate the 4th layer of the eternal spring art. Thank you for your kind intention, Elder Mo. However, next time such kindness, it would be better not to apply it to me." Having resolved a major hidden danger, Han Li's mood improved considerably. He had also come to slightly believe in Dr. Mo's sincerity, and thus he no longer confronted his hypocrisy head-on. "Now, then, may this old man take your pulse." Dr. Mo still uttered this request that was clearly meant to put Han Li in a difficult position. Who knew whether the other party might take this opportunity to restrain him?